Let's come to America and talk about an important election in Wisconsin. Brad Schimel is running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And the reason that the Supreme Court is critical is because the Wisconsin Supreme Court has been the place where they have all these mail-in drop boxes queuing 2,000 mules here, and the mail-in drop boxes were then outlawed by the court. But see, when the complexion of the court changes, when they have a Supreme Court election, and when the left or the Democrats come in and they take charge of the court, and in fact they did take charge of the court, once again they changed the rules to allow, or they changed the interpretation of the rules to allow mail-in drop boxes. And the chances are that if they win this court seat, they will go even further and call for the mass mailing of ballots. And this, of course, creates massive opportunities for fraud. This is actually why they do it, because they want the fraud to occur. And all of this could have a tremendous impact on congressional seats in Wisconsin, not to mention the rules governing the way that Wisconsin votes in a presidential election. So Elon Musk is in Wisconsin. He had a big rally in Wisconsin last night. And the rally was interesting in its own right, because he said a number of fascinating things. At one point, he brought on one of the leading guys at Doge. And this is what I want to highlight. The Doge team has found that since 2021, let's pause to digest this, 5.5 million illegal aliens got Social Security numbers. Whoa. Because the Democrats have been assuring us illegal aliens can't vote. But yeah, even if we give them driver's licenses, that's just going to allow them to function in our society. They pay taxes, but they don't affect the electoral outcomes. Well, as it turns out, they do. 5.5 million illegals have gotten Social Security cards. Some of these aliens are registered to vote, and some have already voted in U.S. elections. So what's happening is Doge is pulling the names of all these illegals who have voted and referring it to Homeland Security, this is the way it needs to happen. Now, I am quite confident that the illegals aren't just doing this all by themselves. Nobody goes to another country and says, I want to vote in those elections. I'm willing to take the chance that I may be deported or incarcerated, but I'm going to do it anyway. No, these are aliens who go to the other country, and then somebody puts them up to it. Somebody shows them how to get it done. Probably the people who brought them there in the first place. And so I noticed that David Sachs makes the observation, it's not just that 2.1 million Social Security numbers were issued to non-citizens in 2024. Think of this, 2.1 million Social Security numbers issued to illegals. But what you see is a trend line of more and more and more and more. So, for example, you have in fiscal year 2021, they gave 270,000 Social Security numbers to illegals. It goes up to 590,000 by 2022, 964,000 by 23, and then 2,095,000 by 2024. So this is a frightening phenomenon, but it begins to make sense. You think about, why did the Biden administration bring in all these illegals? Why did they take so much political risk to do it? They knew that there are people who are outraged by it. They knew that there was a resistance building. So there's got to be some pressing reason why they would keep doing it. They took the risk of terrorist attacks on U.S. soil. They knew there was going to be an explosion of crime that was going to come back and haunt them politically. So what was the great prize? What was the buried treasure? What was the reason to push ahead with this? And the answer is vast numbers of illegals being added to the voter rolls, vast numbers of illegals being enabled through driver's licenses and Social Security numbers. Think about it. These are the most commonly accepted forms of identification. Who are you? Here's my driver's license. Here's my Social Security card. Oh, okay. So in general, the government realized we can use these mechanisms of identification to take people who shouldn't be here, are not legal, but nevertheless integrate them into the system to such a point that if and when they do vote, it's not even going to be detectable. It's not going to be seen as a big deal. They've got the ID. They can show, yeah, this is who I am. Here we go. This is a state issued or a government issued ID. So the degree of corruption that Doge is identifying goes beyond the financial. There's been a lot of focus on waste and fraud and money being misused here and money being abused there, and all of that is true. But here we see how the end goal is not just to take over the monetary mechanisms, but to take over the election mechanisms, which ultimately deliver control of the country to one party or the other. And then you automatically control those monetary mechanisms completely. So the Democrats have always kept their eye not only on the fiscal ball, which is the spending, not only on the resources of the government, but also on the way in which elections are decided. And think of it, they've had essentially a secret force here. It's almost like we've got our own army that we can deploy. It's the army of illegals. We've got to think of all kinds of ways to give them the tools so that the distinction between legal and illegal becomes blurred. And many of us as conservatives, we know the illegals are here, but we kind of have confidence, or at least we have hope that this isn't going to be a problem right away. Maybe it'll be a problem with their children or in future generations, or maybe it's a problem indirectly because it affects the census count and that affects apportionment. But no, we're talking about the straightforward phenomenon of enabling mechanisms that give illegals access to Social Security cards, driver's licenses, other forms of ID. And that means that when they show up at the ballot box, they don't even necessarily need an absentee ballot. They can even show up in person and produce an ID. Why? Because A, they're on the voter rolls, somebody got them there, and B, they've got the driver's license and the Social Security card to say, this is who I am. All right, carry right on, pick up your ballot, and thank you for voting.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.